Thank you very much, and it's really good to be here today to speak to so many of you about the Winterbourne View Review. As Carol said, I joined the review, working in the Department of Health in May last year, and that was shortly after the review had been set up by the former Minister for Care Services, Paul Burstow. My plan today, we've got about 30 minutes, so I was planning to speak for about 20 minutes or so, and to tell you a little bit about the overview of the review and where we've got to, and the progress, and then to open up for a few questions if we've got time as well. Okay. So I want to start by telling you a little bit about what the review has found so far, and we've amassed an awful amount of information since the review started. Not only about what happened at Winterbourne View itself, and I know you've heard from Margaret Flynn and Deborah Moore this morning, but also about the quality and safety of care provided in other learning disability hospitals and care homes. And we've heard a lot from speaking to people who use services and their families, and we're talking here about the reality of care for people with learning disabilities or autism and behaviour which challenges or mental health conditions. So an awful lot of information has been developed over the last 18 months or so. And just to give you a quick update, the CQC inspection started off the review process by looking at the whole of the Castlebeck Care Services. They inspected 23 facilities in addition to Winterbourne View. They then went on to do a further thematic inspection of 150 hospitals and care homes for people with learning disabilities, and that completed in February of this year. And they inspected around 71 NHS facilities, 47 independent healthcare facilities, and 32 adult social care facilities, and found low levels of compliance where they inspected against two particular outcomes: Outcome 4, which is care and welfare, and Outcome 7, which is safeguarding adults. And only 51% of those 150 hospitals and care homes were found to be compliant with both of those standards. So it's pretty poor care across the sector. The CQC published their national report, which set out the summary of those findings in June of this year. And you can find out more details about what they found in that report. And at the same time, the Department of Health published its interim report into Winterbourne View. And that report set out the preferred model of care, and it committed to 14 national actions to deliver change. And I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute. The serious case review was published on the 7th of August, and I know Margaret has spoken a lot about that this morning, so I'm not going to go into much details about that. So we will be publishing a final Department of Health report in the autumn, which is not quite yet, but will be shortly. And that report will pull together all the publications and information that has been sent into the review, as well as information that we've had from extensive engagement with people who use services and their families and the groups that represent them. And the aim is that we set out a full report and a programme of action which will include concrete and timetabled actions to deliver change and to address the failings that we found in the care for people. And alongside the report, we're planning to publish a concordat. This is an agreement with key delivery partners who are critical to making change happen, because this is about change across the whole system. It's about commissioners, providers, regulators, workforce, government, all working together to make change happen. And what the Concordat will do will commit all the signatories to a general statement about the need for change and what we want to achieve, and it will set out specific actions which need to be taken and which each partner will take. And currently we're hoping that the signatories to the Concordat will include the National Commissioning Board, the Care Quality Commission, Health Watch, as well as provider organisations, professional organisations, Royal Colleges, and we're hoping that our voluntary sector organisations will sign up and commit to holding us all to account for delivering change. So I think the Concordat will be a really powerful statement when it is published alongside the final report. So I want to say a little bit more about what the review has found so far. Winterbourne View was an extreme example of abuse and poor quality care, but there are other issues for the wider system as a whole. And what we found is that there are too many people going into assessment and treatment services, and that they're staying there for too long. And the reason people tend to be going into inpatient assessment and treatment is that because the right community-based services aren't available to support them locally. So where people are going into inpatient care, many are staying there for very long periods. The CQC National Summary Report found that some people, the range of length of stay was from between 6 weeks to 17 years. And it seems really hard to think that people are getting assessment and treatment for that length of time. Often where people were in assessment and treatment units, opportunities to share information and spot what was going on were missed. People were not talking to each other in terms of what care was being delivered. And people with challenging behaviours in specialist hospitals were at particular high risk of poor quality care, particularly when they were placed out of area. So there is a particular issue around people in out of area placements. The review also found that in many cases there is a lack of collaboration in commissioning and planning for services, and a failure to start with the individual from childhood in that planning and commissioning. And for some people, and I expect Margaret talked about this, there was very poor general health care provided and dental care in inpatient services, and a particular over-reliance and inappropriate use of restraint and lack of training in positive behavioural supports. I think it's particularly true that for people who are in long lengths of stay in assessment and treatment units, that very often has been because that people have no plans to move back out from assessment and treatment units. And I know that one of the Mansell reports in 2010 found 25% of patients in assessment and treatment had finished their treatment but had no plans for discharge. So what the DH review wants to do is to make sure that the right model of care is delivered. And the interim report described what that model should be, very much based on what was set out in the original Mansell reports. And that is local, personalised and community-based services involving integrated work with every part of the health, social care and housing system working together to develop responsive and preventative services. It's about improving outcomes for this group of people, for people with learning disabilities with behaviour that challenges, and making sure that their well-being and quality of life are enhanced. And it's about avoiding unnecessary admissions to inpatient settings. And this is about local services. Local services are critical to making change happen, because they're the ones that make the decision to place somebody in assessment and treatment in the first place. They're the ones who fund out-of-area placements. They're the ones who are monitoring the contracts and the services that are provided. And they're the ones who've got the power to bring people back home. And there are real benefits to people being looked after in their own local, by their own local services. Starting with the fact it's the right thing to do. I mean, people want to live at home with their families or close to them as far as possible. Local services with the right skills can provide that support to people. And if they're doing so, they can contain costs. The Association of Supported Living wrote a report called There Is an Alternative, which they submitted to the review. And that was looking at 10 people who moved from assessment and treatment to community services. And for those 10 people, the savings were around £900,000 a year in total. So it's not just about giving people better quality services. You can do that at reduced costs. And the other thing about local services is that they are better placed to detect and monitor